Hi everyone, my name is Blandina. I am a dental hygienist and a dental therapist. I practice here in England, in Hampshire, which is the southern part of the UK. Today's video, I want to discuss with you what the salary of a dental hygienist and dental therapist typically can be within the United Kingdom, concentrating mainly in England because I live in England and that's where I am practicing. Originally, I qualified as a dental nurse, and in 2008, I qualified as a dental hygienist. And then I went back to university and qualified as a dental therapist in 2013. At the moment, currently, I am practicing as a dental hygienist and dental therapist. In this video, I will be discussing what the average pay of a dental hygienist and therapist can be, the starting salary, and again, what the highest pay can be, but all of it is really dependable on experience. And also, if you're freshly graduated from university, the pay range can differ a lot from being freshly qualified and being an experienced dental hygienist. So in the United Kingdom, in England, you can be employed either as a self-employed hygienist or an employed hygienist, which basically means when you're employed, you sign a contract with your employer, you become an employee. And with an employee, you obviously get paid on a monthly basis or whatever arrangement that has gone through. And you are usually entitled to sick pay, sick leave, holidays, you're paid as well. And usually you don't pay your own income tax. Income tax is already deducted by the time you receive your pay. On the other hand, you can work as a self-employed dental hygienist or therapist. This term, you have to pay your own tax. You have to submit your own tax with the HMRC at the end of the working year. And you have to either find your own accountant or you can submit on your own. And again, you sign your contract with your principal or the owner of the practice as a self-employed dental hygienist. The difference is usually is with self-employed, you can negotiate your own time, or you can have a discussion with your the owner of the practice as to the dates you want to work. It's usually negotiable timings when you start, finishing times, and you can discuss that on your interviews. And when they pay you, they're paying you before deducting the tax. So you have to make sure you're filing your tax at the end of the tax year. As well, you can be employed either on an hourly rate or you can be paid according to how many patients you've seen on a patient-to-patient basis on a percentage type of payment. And that, again, is discussed during your interviews with your employer or the owner of the practice. Whilst if you're employed, there's a set salary that you will make and you'll know annually how much you make. If you're self-employed, it's usually dependent on how many patients you've seen during that month, and again during the year when you calculate how many patients you make. So your pay will always differ compared to one working as an employed hygienist. So when you've gone for your interview and you're discussing your pay as a self-employed hygienist or therapist, you'll either decide with your with the owner of the practice whether you want to be paid as an hourly rate. Again, remember to ask what happens if you're paid on an hourly rate, but there's no patients. Are you still getting paid or are they not paying you? Talking from experience, the last practices I worked with, I was getting paid regardless whether a patient turned up or not. I was getting paid on an hourly rate and it didn't affect me whether a patient turned up or not, or whether they cancelled short notice. It didn't affect me. They were paying me regardless. But that's something that you can discuss in your interviews, because there's other times that you wouldn't get paid. If there's no patient, you wouldn't get paid. Whilst that's when you're employed, it doesn't make a difference. Your payment, your salary is set. It's not dependent on whether patients turn up or not. You still get the same salary at the end of the month. If you're an employed dental hygienist or therapist, usually here in England, talking from experience and also doing my research, a lot of people who are employed in hospitals, are employed in the armed forces. They're also employed in general dental practice, and some are employed in prison services. So there is a vast variety of employers who would take people on an employment basis. Again, these jobs in hospitals, sometimes they're quite hard to find or they're not a lot. So with applications, there might be a lot more applications for one spot. However, if you're self-employed, this is a more popular way for dental hygienists working here in England. You work usually on a self-employed basis, and there's quite a lot of work through general dental practices. So you're typically employed in your normal general dental practice in the streets. You find some in the high streets, and again in around shopping areas, in very busy areas, busy roads, you find a general dental practice, and they usually employ a self-employed hygienist or therapist. And like we said, pay is then discussed either on an hourly rate or a percentage per patient. Now, again, with your percentage, you will discuss that with your employer, with the owner of the practice manager, whoever's conducted your interview, how much percentage you should get paid. And that would be discussed, again, dependent on experience. The more experience will be able to negotiate good percentage for themselves. If you're freshly qualified, again, it can be difficult to demand or maybe ask for a higher percentage, because they might be like, oh, you've not worked that long, and again, you're newly qualified. Sometimes your pay might be on the lower starting pay, but again, it's worth negotiating with the owner of the practice. If you're working under self-employed basis, you can choose either whether to work with an independent general practice, or you can choose to work under a corporate. With an independent practice, typically it could be a family running the practice, maybe husband and wife, maybe friends that joined up to open a dental practice. If you prefer to work for a corporate, these are big companies that have lots of dental practices running throughout the country. Again, you can choose to work with a corporate. There's different reasons, advantages and disadvantages to working with a corporate or an independent practice. With a corporate, usually the pay is set by the company, and when you go to work for them, the pay is set. It's very difficult to negotiate a price, because every hygienist within that same corporate is usually on the same rate of pay. It might be dependent with experience. The more experience might be paid a set pay, a higher pay. The newly qualified might also have another rate for newly qualified hygienists, but basically their pays are usually set, and it's very difficult to sort of negotiate your own pay when everyone else is getting paid the same rate within the whole company. On the other hand, with an independent practice, you can negotiate your pay. It's usually between yourself and the owner of the practice, the principal. You can have a discussion, and if they're happy to raise your pay, depending on your experience or however the interview goes, your negotiating skills, you can discuss the pay and get the pay that you're looking for. So there is disadvantages and advantages for working for both, and usually it's a personal choice. I have worked with both. I've worked with an independent practice and enjoyed it, and worked with a corporate as well, and both have been, they've been really good pay. But I found with the independent practice, you can ask and negotiate your pay. With a corporate, it was a set pay, and I was told that all hygienists are paid this percentage pay. What I've found as well with corporates, speaking from experience, I earned more working for a corporate because it's a big company and their fee was higher that they were charging the patients. With that, it meant the percentage pay that I was getting was giving me more money per month working for a corporate as compared to working for an independent practice. If we discuss the actual pay of what a dental hygienist and a dental therapist makes here in the United Kingdom, I did some research before. These are the latest figures that I could find online, and I wanted to be really accurate. So I'm going to be reading through the notes that I made earlier. So bear with me. So privately paid. So I'm going to compare the private pay for dental hygienists working in England or United Kingdom, and also the NHS pay. This is the public pay that you might get if you're working for a hospital run by the NHS, or working for the armed forces, or some areas, maybe prison services, some areas that are being paid through government funding, and also private companies. So we're going to compare the two. So if we start with the private pay, private pay was listed as, if you're working as an experienced hygienist, you could earn anything from 46,000 to 63,000 per year. Working in the private sector, you could make from starting salary from £25 an hour to something like £40 an hour, depending on experience. And this was working privately with general dental practice, or any sort of company that was working privately, or corporate or independent. Now, if you're very experienced, with a lot more qualifications, good at negotiating your pay, the higher earners could make as much as £78,000 to £80,000 a year working as dental hygienists. And this was private, corporate, or independent. Now, if you're working for the NHS, if you're getting paid and you're working in a hospital run by the NHS, you were probably making from the starting salary from the NHS, it was listed from 27,000 to about 32,000 a year, and you work as a band 5 NHS employee. And your hourly rate was anything from £16 to £32 an hour if you're a very experienced hygienist. If you went up to band 7 in the NHS, you would make something like £47,000 a year, or just over £47,000 a year under band 7. According to the research I made earlier, if you're working in the private sector as a dental hygienist, the highest earner would be earning around £78,000, pushing it to £80,000 a year, the very highest and experienced hygienist. In the NHS, you would be working under band 7, and these are the more experienced. If you've worked for a long time in the NHS, because your pay keeps going up yearly, you would be making around 47,000, getting close to £48,000 a year. And that's a band 7 employee. Now, as a dental therapist, if you're working in the private sector, you would be making, as an experienced dental therapist, you'd be making around £45,000 a year. And if you're just starting out, you would be making around 28,000. So anything from 28,000 as your starting salary, going all the way up to 45,000 pounds a year as a dental therapist. Again, you could be earning in the NHS, you could be earning anything from 33,000 pounds all the way up to 58,000 pounds as a dental therapist working within the NHS, and dependent on your experience. So typically your hourly rate would be private sector, anything again from £20 an hour to £41 per hour, depending on experience. And the NHS, again, is the same. Some areas paying £16, £18 per hour, going all the way up to £35 per hour. When I did my research, the highest pay was coming from the south of England. So if we go through the figures, I'm going to read out the figures for you. If we start with Scotland, the average pay for a dental hygienist and therapist is £40,000 a year. In Wales, it's coming up to £59,000 a year. In Northern Ireland, it's £51,000 a year. And these figures are for higher earners in these countries. Now, in England, if we start with London, London being the capital of the United Kingdom, the highest earners for dental hygienists and therapists are found in London. So if you want a high-paying job as a dental hygienist, then London is where you want to be. So the average pay for the higher earners in London was 74,000. In the southeast of England, it was 73,000. Southwest of England, it came up to £65,000. The northeast of England, the north of England was £50,000. The Midlands, the middle of England was earning £64,000 a year, and Yorkshire and Humberside was earning £42,000 a year. And these were the higher earners around the United Kingdom. So I hope this video has been helpful to you if you're planning to be a dental hygienist and you've been wondering how much a dental hygienist can typically make. In 2024, these are the salaries of a dental hygienist. So anything from £40,000 a year going all the way up to £80,000 a year. If you're newly qualified, some are starting at £32,000 a year. All the pointers are that the pay and salary for dental hygienists will always go up yearly. So we're in a good profession, we're in a good career, and depending on your experience and again qualifications, that will add to your pay. So hopefully this video was helpful. Please comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.